The Walker's Haute route is an iconic long-distance hike, stretching over 220 kilometers through the Alps from France to Switzerland. While it can take up to 2 weeks to complete, the best part is that you can tailor it to your own pace and preferences. In this video, I'll show you how to plan your own version of the hike. What we loved about this hike is that it connects to the most iconic mountain peaks in Europe. You start from Mont Blanc and you finish at Matterhorn. The hike is over 200 kilometers long, so it is quite long, usually takes up to 2 weeks to complete it. But the good thing is that you can modify it quite easily. So if you want to speed things up or if you want to skip some parts, that is quite easy, and I'm going to show how you can do it. Also, I'm going to show you the best highlights along this route, some things that you shouldn't miss. And even though this route is not technical, there are a few parts that can be a bit scary for people who are afraid of heights. So I'm going to talk about those parts as well and how you can skip them if you want to. So the Walker's Haute route is a point-to-point hike, and you start from Chamonix in France and you finish in Zermatt in Switzerland. Basically, you will stay 1 day in France and then the rest of the time is in Switzerland. You could do the hike either way. However, it is more common to start from France, from Chamonix, and then you finish in Zermatt. Because there you see the Matterhorn, which is pretty iconic. I think it's like the model of mountaintops. It is so picturesque. So I think it's a perfect way to finish a hike. You have the views of the Matterhorn. To show you the hike properly, I'm gonna use a guide from takeahike.io. So you can also find this guide and see all the same information I'm going to show you. So you have the elevation profile and all the details of our stages, how we did it. So go ahead and check it out. Now, the Haute route, it might have quite many variations, so you can modify the hike a lot. And we chose to follow the National Geographic's map, and our numbers for the hike were 219 kilometers. The elevation gain was 16,300. Elevation loss 15,800. And the max elevation was about 3,000. And we did this hike in 11 days. Each stage was between 15 and 22k. And the elevation gain always about over 1,000. So as numbers, they are a lot. So this hike, it is strenuous. Like, you need to be fit, especially if you are planning to camp and you carry all of your tents and camping gear. So you need to be quite fit to do this. Otherwise, you're going to suffer a lot. We did suffer a bit as well. Like, our knees were probably the parts that were hurting the most. To start the hike, you need to get to Chamonix first. And the closest airport would be in Geneva, which is actually in Switzerland. And from the airport, you can take a shuttle bus directly to Chamonix. It's about 1 hour journey. And for example, with EasyBus, they had quite frequent service and it was cheap as well. And when you finish the hike in Zermatt, you can take a train out and you can take a train back to Geneva airport. Regarding accommodation, you have a lot of options. For example, the mountain huts, you have a lot of them along the way. There are some campsites as well. And then when you go down to the valleys where you have these little villages, there you can find some hotels and little bed and breakfast places. And so here on the map, you can see these are all the mountain huts that you will go through. So there are quite a lot of them. Some of them, they're not like directly on the routes, but if you want to do some sort of little detour, you can get to these mountain huts as well. And then for the campsites, you can see them here. So these are official campsites that you need to pay, but there are quite a few of them. Another option for the accommodation would be these unmanned huts. So these huts are free for anybody to use. They are very basic. So they usually have some bunk beds, there's a table inside, and a water source, and some sort of toilet, but there aren't anyone working there. So they do ask you to leave like a donation so that they can keep up with the services, and then sometimes this guard comes there and, checks the place. And there are 2 unmanned huts right next to this lake, and we spent 1 night in here. And when it comes to wild camping, in Switzerland, it seems to be tolerated as long as you follow a few rules. So you always need to respect the nature and you leave no trace. Then you only pitch the tent for the night. So you pitch the tent right before sunset and you take it down right after sunrise. And you always need to be in the high mountains, which is basically above the tree line and over 2,000 meters of elevation. However, there are some areas where it's like a game reserve or like a national park. So in those areas, it's absolutely prohibited to pitch the tent. Finding food and water is pretty easy along this trail. So you will go through a lot of mountain huts where you can always restock with water and buy some food. And also you will go through a lot of little villages where you can find little supermarkets, some bakeries or cafes or even restaurants, so you can get like a proper meal as well. Now let's talk about the highlights along this trail. The first highlight is actually on the day one. So when you leave Chamonix, you can climb up to these mountains, and when you're up here, if the weather allows, you can see really cool views of Mont Blanc. Some route maps that we saw for the Haute routes, they would start from Chamonix, but they would stay down in the valley. But you would miss a lot of good views. Only if the weather is really bad, if it's really rainy, a bit stormy, then it could be a good idea to stay down in the valley because it's safer. Another highlight for us was on day 2, and it was climbing to this mountain pass. So this mountain pass is quite high, and as you can see here on the elevation gain, it's like one of the steepest climbs along this route. So it is steep and kind of a long climb, but it's beautiful. And then you go down to Chambex-Lac, which is a beautiful lake as well. The next highlight was a suspension bridge over here. It was on day 4. And this bridge, it's quite high, it's quite long. So for some people, if you are afraid of heights, it could be a bit scary. I got nervous when I saw this bridge. First, because I didn't know that we had to cross such a bridge. Like, it was very high, it was really long, and underneath there was this like really raging river flowing as well. So it felt quite hostile, the environment. And then far away you can see like views of a glacier. So it was beautiful, but also for me it made me nervous to cross this one. And if you want to skip this bridge, you can. From this mountain hut, there is a road that goes down to the valley, to Fionnet. And then another highlight, right on the same day, was this lake, Lac Louvis. This one was really beautiful. And another highlight for us was on the day 5, and it was this mountain pass here. This one is the highest point along the whole route. And another highlight was this lake over here, the Lac des Dix. This one is the biggest lake you will see along the trail, and it was beautiful. Like, you will hike along the side of it. And actually the best views were from this mountain pass. Like, once you climb up here and then you see the lake view from the top, that was like the best part. And shortly after the lake, you will get to this part, which can be maybe the most scariest part for some people. They are the ladders, the Pas de Chèvre. And these are some like vertical ladders that you need to climb to get over the mountain pass. For me, this was the part where I was most scared. And with these ladders, you had like 3 or 4 levels that you go up. So you could fall from quite high. But again, if you don't want to go through these parts, this one you can skip quite easily. So before you get to the ladders, there is a route up here that would just climb over the mountain pass. It was very steep, looked quite rocky, so there's a lot of like loose scree, but you can just like hike over the mountain pass. The route goes like here, and then it connects to the route here. Another highlight would be another lake, and that would be the Lac des Moiries over here. And this lake was simply stunning. The color of it was this super turquoise, so really beautiful lake. The last highlights along this trail would be the Europaweg trail. That is already very close to Zermatt, and it goes over up here in these mountains. And now this would be a highlight if you could do this, but unfortunately the trail has been closed for several years now. Now, when we were doing this hike, we had no idea that the Europaweg trail was closed. Only the day before we were about to go there, we were staying at a hotel and we met some other hikers as well, and people were kind of like talking about this part. Then we all found out that you cannot go there. The trail has been closed, or like it has been closed for several years now. And I didn't read any information about this when I was doing my research for this hike. I don't know how I missed it. But anyways, it has been closed due to landslides and rockfalls. So it's not safe to do this trail anymore. And it is a shame because at least what I read, that it would be one of the highlights on this hot routes. But however, you can still continue the hike. We just had to make like a plan B. So we would go on the lower level. It would be mostly in the forest here, and then you would connect to the original one right before the Haute. So I would say it's pretty important to know this beforehand, just so that you don't get disappointed while you are out there. And let's talk about how you can modify this route. So if you are on a tight schedule, you can skip some parts, or you could use cable cars or bus services to speed things up. So I'm going to show you one of the easiest ways you can skip some parts. So right here, right at the beginning, you can skip. And that's what we did. So we actually, from Chamonix, we took a cable car up to this mountain hut over here. To climb up here, it's over 1,000 meters and you go through a forest. So we thought like we kind of need to get a kickstart. So we chose to take a cable car from here, from northern Chamonix, up to this mountain hut. And then over here, you can also use a bus service to skip this part. So from Arroya, you can take a bus all the way to this village here. However, there is a cute little lake here that seems really beautiful. So if you do have the time to do this trail, because it is kind of easy. It is 9 kilometers and elevation gain is very little. And you are basically just going on the side of the valley. So in a way, for sure, it is beautiful part, but we needed to speed things up. So we decided to take the bus. And also on the next day, we were planning to just hike to continue the normal trail. But then we found out that there is a bus that you could take all the way up here. Because this area in the valley, it's like urban area. Like you go through little villages. So we decided that if we use a bus, we're not gonna miss out on like amazing climbs or like some really beautiful paths. It's basically just getting out from the valley and finding the trailhead. So we took a bus here as well. And yeah, you save 3 kilometers, but then you mostly save 300 meters of elevation, especially because for us on that day, it was already going to be a very long day. So 23 kilometers, and then the original plan was over 2,000 meters of elevation gain. So since we took this bus here, we saved 300 meters of elevation, and then it made that stage a little bit easier. And then on this stage here, you will go through some ski slopes, and these are connected with some cable cars. So you could go down to Zinal with a cable car. So if you want to save your knees a little bit, you could take a cable car down. Also here, getting to St. Niklaus, there is a cable car that you can take down. And then from St. Niklaus, again, to get up here to the higher mountains, we took a bus just to skip the urban parts. Because here you go on the road, you just kind of need to gain some elevation to get out from the valley and from the city. 3 kilometers, but then elevation gain, it's almost 600. So it's a lot of elevation. But then if it's mostly on the urban parts, so we didn't feel too guilty about taking the bus. The last way to skip some parts would be to use a train here in this valley. So basically, if you really want, you could take a train from San Niklaus all the way to Zermatt. I mean, that would be a bit anticlimactic finish if you just arrive to Zermatt with a train. But well, if the weather is really bad, why not? Or if you want, you could take a train from here and then stop in one of these little villages, and then there are trails going up, so you could still connect to the higher routes here, and then at least like hike the last part to Zermatt. Because then here, of course, if the weather allows, you would see nice views of the Matterhorn already. However, we weren't that lucky. For us, our last day was really cloudy, and all the clouds, they seem to be stuck on the Matterhorn, so we didn't see it at all on that day. On the next day, yes, because we spent a few nights in Zermatt, so eventually we did see the Matterhorn, it is iconic. It's super beautiful, but if the weather is good, you should be able to see really nice views along this trail over here. And then about the general information, the best time to do this hike would be in the summertime, so from July to mid-September, and because these are very high mountains, so the mountain passes might have quite a bit of snow still in June and early July as well, depending on how the winter season was. We did this hike in August, and we didn't see much snow there. Like on the mountain passes, very, very little. So that's basically everything you need to know about the Walker's Haute route. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. And also, if you want to see more visual version of this hike, I have also made a silent hiking film. So I'm going to link that down in the description. So go ahead and check it out. And don't forget to subscribe.